thoughts on that?
What do you plan to tell the committee?
Well, we have all the same questions that I think you all would ask. We want to know what went on during the prosecution when many believe that Epstein was awarded a sweetheart plea deal. So we're going to ask a lot of questions about this. This is going to be a pretty hard-hitting deposition today, transcribed interview. So hopefully we'll be able to get some information back to you all as soon as possible. And again, this is a very serious, very fast-moving investigation. We want it to be bipartisan, so we're going to continue. Let me give you an update. We've talked to the Treasury. We have the suspicious activity report coming into our possession. We have some that have been redacted. We're going to go to Treasury and see the unredacted version. So let me say this: the Trump administration is fully cooperating with us in this investigation. We're going to continue to get more documents in from the estate, unredacted, and we will be able to answer some more questions. So.
Do you plan to ask about the FBI director said in his testimony earlier this week that the non-prosecution agreement that Acosta oversaw hamstrung investigators, which is one reason why they haven't been able to get to the bottom of a lot of these questions that are being asked? Do you plan to ask about that? Yeah,
absolutely. And I think if you go back to what Patel said with respect to Acosta, that poured fuel on the fire, so to speak. We're going to continue to try to seek answers. We want to know what happened. According to the survivors of Epstein, they said that they had reached out to government authorities. They had spoken to investigators. They had spoken to FBI agents in the past, and yet nothing happened. So, according to the victims and the survivors of Epstein, there was a lot of warning about the crimes that Epstein and Maxwell were committing, but yet it appears the government let the victims down and they didn't prosecute. So Acosta was a major player in that. We're going to have a lot of questions for him. I'm sure the Democrats will as well. We'll keep you updated. And as far as an update of the investigation, we have the bank records. And when we met with the victims and we said, what can we do? What can we do to expedite this investigation, to be able to provide justice for you all? They said, follow the money. Follow the money. And that's what we're doing. And again, the Trump administration is fully cooperating with that, and I feel like we'll be able to hopefully get some more answers and have some more documents to post on our website hopefully very soon. Thank you all.
House is going to advance some of this plea agreement. Do you think that there's anything that you can tell you all today that might enlighten you more about how this all unfolded? Do you think that there's anything you might say that could validate what we all know about this? He's defended it, and that's kind of shocking.
Well, yeah, I mean, we're going to ask those questions. So, I'm sure that he knows we're going to ask those questions. So he should be fully prepared to answer those questions. And again, this is the most extensive investigation of Epstein to date. What's frustrating to me is you continue to write about the discharge petition. We have gone far beyond the discharge petition. The discharge petition didn't mention the state. We've already subpoenaed and accumulated the documents from the state. We have one more batch we expect to get in. We've already interviewed Bill Barr. We have Acosta today. So we're so far past what the discharge petition was wanting to do. It's not even a factor now. So hopefully we'll get some answers. And at the end of the day, the objective is to get justice for the victims of Epstein Island. And it's I have to say this, it's very disappointing that the Democrats have just so politicized this. Joe Biden had 4 years where he could have released the Epstein document, or the Autopin could have released the Epstein document. Whoever was running the show could have released the Epstein document, and they did not. They did not. And if you ask any Democrats about this investigation, they seldom mention the victim. They only talk about Trump. And Nothing that we've received. We've had hours of meetings with the victims. Maxwell's talked, Bill Barr's talked, the other AGs have sent letters. There's no liability for Donald Trump. There's no evidence that shows Donald Trump was involved in this. So I think you need to refocus the investigation and remember the purpose is to try to get some type of justice for the victims and to find out what happened. Were there prosecutors that turned a blind eye? I think hopefully today we'll be able to get some answers. So thank you all for being here.
Epstein's victims released a statement this week saying that they were deeply upset with Mr. Patel's testimony. Mr. Patel said that there wasn't evidence in the FBI's possession that victims were trafficked to other people. What do you make of these victims and their reaction to what Mr. Patel said?
Well, I mean, we want to work with the victims, so we're trying to review the data too, and we've expressed to the victims it would be helpful if they would give us some names of some people. We'll look at the bank records. That was one of the things the attorney said. Look at the bank violations, the bank records, and you will find potentially some names. Right now, there haven't been any names that have emerged other than press reports. The documents haven't showed that. That doesn't mean there aren't any. I don't know. That's why we're getting more documents in, and we'll have questions for him. And hopefully the victims will continue to communicate with our staff and our attorneys, because we'll put a list together. If there's a list, we'll find it. If there's not a list, we'll try to put together who we think was involved. But right now, the documentation hasn't shown any names of anyone that was trafficked other than Epstein and Maxwell. So, but hopefully we'll have more conversations with the victims, and hopefully we'll find some stuff out today.
Chairman, can I just ask if you...
Okay, thank you. My name is Robert Garcia. I'm the ranking member of the Oversight Committee. We've got Oversight Democrats here. I think most folks know that we have Alex Acosta with us here for the next few hours, who is obviously right now involved in a line of questioning on both Republican and Democrats. So we've just finished our first hour with Mr. Acosta, and so we do have some comments members are going to talk about, and then this will continue throughout the day, just to be very clear. I just want to make some things clear that we made clear and that we heard from Mr. Acosta just in this first hour. Now, it's very clear that Alex Acosta ran a deeply flawed investigation of the Epstein case. That's clear. He also would not admit that Mr. Epstein received a sweetheart deal, which has been widely reported and agreed upon since that deal was actually made by Mr. Acosta and his team. So he would not admit, and in fact stands by the decision to have given Mr. Epstein a sweetheart deal, which was only 18 months, and which during that time he went on to abuse multiple women that he raped during that time, where he was supposed to, of course, have been in jail by the team by Acosta. Let me also just add, which I think is really important. In his questioning, he also agreed and stood by those decisions and would not claim any responsibility to the victims, and in fact said and was admitted that he had no knowledge of what happened to those victims, even to this day. When asked directly if he actually knew that people were being abused, that women were abused during that time, he would not admit that he knew that information and actually refused to acknowledge the victims. And so with that, I'm going to turn this over to Ms. Crockett, and everyone's going to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ranker. And I think I want to pick up on where Congressman Garcia left off. It is this idea that he is not experiencing what most of us experience, which is that hindsight is 20/20. He seems to be pretty dug in on the decisions that he made. And so for me, obviously, I wanted to dig in a little bit and try to ascertain why is it that he felt so confident. And unfortunately, I heard things that disturbed me, such as, well, back in 2006, it was a different time. And it seemed as if we were going back to a little bit of victim shaming and believing that, well, nobody's going to believe these girls or these women, so we're not going to necessarily have a good case. And so instead of rolling the dice, or I don't remember, I think it was a crapshoot was what was said, instead of taking a crapshoot, we just decided that this would be better and this may guarantee that he actually spent some time in custody. Think about that. Think about the responsibility that is upon a prosecutor to go after a child predator and then to say, well, at the end of the day, we don't think they would have been believed. As someone who has been in these courtrooms, who has had to defend against these very types of cases, let me tell you something. And I did try to educate him on the experts that we have that can lay out whether or not a child has any inconsistencies as it relates to the trauma that they have experienced. It doesn't seem like either Mr. Acosta was equipped to be the U.S. attorney at that time, or he's just playing in our faces. I haven't really figured out which one, but neither one of these ultimate conclusions should be okay for the American people.
Hello, Brady. Congressman Maxwell Frost. I 100% agree with what Congresswoman Crockett just said. Mr. Acosta, at least to us in this deposition, essentially said he didn't have faith in the victims, their stories, and their ability to tell their own story and their own testimony, which is deeply disturbing to all of us sitting in there. Not just that, but it seems like Mr. Acosta really had no idea about what was going on in his own office during this investigation, during the deliberation on this, on what is the most high-profile case that his office handled during that time period, which is also a very disturbing fact, given all the other cases that they handle as well. There's going to be more questions, but something else we also talked about was his time in being considered to be Secretary of Labor. Another place where he didn't have much information to give us, didn't have much recollection of specific questions that the administration might have asked him about the Epstein case when they were vetting him and considering him to be on the president's cabinet. He did not have much for us there. He gave some, some things he thought he maybe could have remembered. And I think it was just deflection. And so there'll be more questions around this. But as we know, to this day, when he resigned being Secretary of Labor, he still contends that it's had nothing to do with this case. And I think we all know much better than that. Thank you.
All right, well, good morning. I'm Melanie Stansbury, and I represent New Mexico's 1st Congressional District. I want to lay out some key facts for you all. It is our understanding from the victims' attorneys that there were at least 40 minors who gave sworn statements to the FBI as part of the investigation before a decision was made in this case that they had been raped, abused, and trafficked. Over 40 minors. And the line prosecutor in this case wrote an 82-page memo to the leadership in the U.S. Attorney's Office recommending a prosecution. And she was so convinced, based on the evidence and interviews that she had taken and reviewed, that she drafted a 53-page indictment in this case. And what Mr. Acosta just told us is that based on his assessment of the case with his team, that he did not see sufficient evidence to move forward with prosecuting the case, that there were weaknesses in the case. When asked if he made the decision as to whether or not to fully prosecute this case, he took responsibility for it. He said it was the decision of him and his team. But when asked if he had directly reviewed the evidence itself in this case, he said that he had not actually read the statements of the victims. So let me just say this. Something doesn't smell right here. We have a number of hours that we will be spending today to understand what and if Mr. Acosta understood the full scope of the evidence, what he used to make his decisions, and why he chose, instead of pursuing a prosecution in which we know there were at least 40 minors, and afterwards there were many more victims during the non-prosecution period, why he made that decision. And so we will be pursuing that in the coming hours in this interview under oath, but something doesn't smell right here, and we're going to get to the bottom of it.
I'm Congressman Sue Huston from Virginia's 10th Congressional District. Everyone seems to agree that there was this terrible miscarriage of justice in this case, except Alex Acosta. He thinks that his sweetheart deal was actually the best course of action and still seems to stand by it. And he was investigating Jeffrey Epstein, who was a close friend of Donald Trump's, and this came up during his vetting process to join the Trump administration. And so it seems like it's starting to make more sense every day to me why the Trump administration won't release the files. Is because Alex Acosta was involved in the sweetheart deal, and it seems like the Trump administration is going to continue this cover-up until Oversight Dems gets to the bottom of this, because we're the ones that have actually been pushing the right questions in this case.
Good afternoon. It is clear from what we have heard, and we know this, Alex Acosta helped Jeffrey Epstein evade the law. Allowing Epstein a single state charge and a non-prosecution agreement is a slap in the wrist, despite over 30 identified victims at the time. As my colleagues have mentioned, it is clear that Alex Acosta holds no remorse and does not feel, even in hindsight, that Jeffrey Epstein received a sweetheart deal. Now, just a couple of weeks ago, we all sat in the room with the survivors of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell. We heard directly from them, including individuals who were raped and abused by Epstein during this sweetheart deal and during the time period where Alex Acosta made sure that Jeffrey Epstein was able to evade the law. I continue to have more questions now than I did walking into the room earlier today, because this is somebody who is not clearly answering questions. We still need to find out, why is it that the Donald Trump administration felt that he deserved to be the Secretary of Labor during the first Trump administration? So many questions are left to be answered. I think Alex Acosta is a small but important part of this, and it's important to remember that this is a massive cover-up. There are many more people involved, financial institutions involved, potentially foreign governments involved, but this is one key part to getting to the bottom and getting to the answers that we need to get justice for the survivors.
Hi, Congressman Dave Min out of California 47, and before coming to Congress, I was a law professor at UC Irvine. And I'll tell you, after the first hour sitting with Alex Acosta, I found him to be completely non-credible as a witness. His answers were evasive, they obfuscated, and they were just not believable. Just to give you one example, we know that his chief federal prosecutor, in addition to bringing a long charging memo and a prosecution memo, had actually said that the computer evidence that was being withheld by the defense at that point in time, all these files, the surveillance videos, perhaps child pornography, they were not producing it. She had said that that was a smoking gun. That would put this whole thing to bed. When I asked Alex Acosta about this, his response was that he didn't actually review the evidence on this case and would have no input on this, which is just impossible to believe given the high-profile nature of Jeffrey Epstein at the time, given the fact that Alex Acosta was having meetings with the attorneys for Jeffrey Epstein contemporaneously with all this. Completely non-credible. I doubt we'll get a lot of honesty out of him today, but what we're hoping to get is a roadmap to the types of evidence that we can demand from, as the Oversight Committee, from the Epstein estate, a roadmap to that, and of course we're going to continue to get, I believe, a lack of remorse, a lot of obfuscation out of Alex Acosta. Very frustrating, but we are going to get answers. Thank you.
Good afternoon. James Walkinshaw from Virginia's 11th District. I was sworn into Congress last week, and one of the first things I did was sign the discharge petition to release the Epstein files. And what we heard today, what I heard today, validated that decision for me. There is a clear through line over the course of this Epstein tragedy, and it is a callous disregard for the victims and the survivors. And Mr. Acosta demonstrated that today. We know that he signed off on the sweetheart deal for Jeffrey Epstein without consulting with the survivors. Today, he refused to accept what those survivors have told us, that after Jeffrey Epstein was released as a result of that sweetheart deal, he went on to abuse more women. A callous disregard for victims and survivors. And we are going to continue to push and push and push and fight so that those survivors get the transparency and the justice that they deserve. Thank you.
Let me just close up, and then if there's one question or two, we've got to get back to this deposition of these interviews. Just want to remind everyone, so we actually heard from the survivors just recently. This is just a couple of weeks ago. One of the survivors that was there was very clear that she was abused and assaulted and raped by Jeffrey Epstein during his work release, and during that time when he was out, during that 18-month period that was given to him by Mr. Acosta and his team. And yet Mr. Acosta stands by the deal, stands by the fact that women were assaulted and raped during that time, and clearly many before, and would not even agree that anyone was actually abused during that time. We asked him directly if he actually understood that during the sentence that Jeffrey Epstein received, that he went on to abuse other women, and he would not answer that question. He said he was not aware that that actually happened, that he could not confirm that that actually happened. That has been widely reported. And so he is completely not credible, and he's has been clearly involved in the broader cover-up that is happening right now, clearly being directed by the White House and the Attorney General. Lastly, we call again on the President and the Attorney General to release the Epstein files so that the full truth of what happened can be released to the public, and most importantly, the survivors to get the justice that they deserve. There's one question or two, and then we're going to head back.
Mr. Garcia, you covered a lot on Acosta, but we need to ask you about the Jeff Zients transcript. There's been a lot of reporting about his testimony regarding the president's cognitive ability when he was president, suggested that he needed multiple meetings to make decisions, that he'd slowed down. Do you agree with the characterization about what's been reported, and what was your take on that interview?
Look, I think the Republicans keep trying to focus on the past, and they keep focusing on President Biden and his health, while they're ripping away health care from 17 million Americans. Right now, we're focused on the Epstein interview. Yes?
That's the question. During this first part of this interview, did any more names come up that you might want to investigate, or who might have been, quote, on this client list?
I think that every single interview conversation that we have, there are more people that we want to talk to, and certainly more information that we need. But in order to get to the truth, we need the release of the files. Next question.
You brought up vetting several times around his labor secretary position. Did Acosta say he was actually asked about the Epstein investigation while he was vetted for labor secretary?
He was evasive.
He was very evasive about it.
Yeah. So he was asked that question, and he wouldn't really answer the question.
I don't think we got a clear answer. I don't believe we got a clear answer who Acosta was speaking with, or representatives of who may have been speaking to him, not just before that confirmation, but also possibly after. And with that, we're going to actually head back to the question. So thank you very much.
So I'll give you an update if anyone has any questions. I think the interview's going very well, and Mr. Acosta is thus far being very forthcoming. Any questions?
Sure. What's your assessment of his responses with regards to the sweetheart deal? One of the colleagues came out, Burchett, he said that he didn't think he had the help from FBI. Demers saying that he botched the investigation himself. What is your assessment?
Well, we're still digging in, and this is going to be a very long transcribed interview, so there are those are all questions we're going to try to ask and determine the answer. So we'll see. He's still got several hours worth of questions to answer, so we should know the answer to that hopefully very soon.
Mr. Chairman, can I ask you about Jeff Zients and that interview? There's been some reports about what he told your committee. What was your overall
Who's that now?
Jeff Zients, the Biden chief of staff. What was your impression of that interview?
Based on the notes that I read from the interview, because we had the oversight hearing at the same time, but the staff, I've sat down and talked with the staff. I think that he was very clear that he thought that obviously the president wasn't in the same mental shape that he was at the beginning of his term, but it was surprising when we started digging in on who was making the decisions in the White House and things like that. Obviously, we have a lot of questions about the potential unauthorized use of the auto pen. And when we were talking about the pardons, he mentioned that Hunter Biden was present when they were discussing the pardons. I thought that was unusual, because that was part of the arguments that the Democrats were making as to why we didn't need to investigate the Biden family influence peddling was, well, Hunter Biden wasn't a part of the government. He didn't have any role. But there, the chief of staff said he was right there in the room discussing all the pardons, which, by the way, impacted a significant number of his family.
Mr. Chairman.
Those Treasury documents you had mentioned earlier, do you have a time frame from when you're going to be looking at them?
The bank documents?
Yes.
Very soon. We should be looking at them within the next week. So.
Mr. Chairman, Representative Stansberry mentioned that there were over 40, or at least 40 minors who were abused that were part of this investigation. Could you confirm that number, and could you also speak to how many of those victims were memorialized then in 302s by the FBI?
I don't know how many, the exact number of minors. I know that one of the things that Mr. Acosta has implied is that in talking with some of the victims, there were some that gave answers that weren't consistent with others. Some wanted to cooperate, some didn't. So we've got a whole binder full of questions. I think our deposition, and when you look at the transcript, will be a whole lot more substantive than what the Democrats did. The Democrats were in there; they were talking all over each other. It kind of looked like an Oversight Committee hearing in there with the Democrats' first hour. So hopefully, our deposers will get some more substantive answers for you than what the Democrats did in their first hour.
Democratic colleagues.
Democrats just came out and said that Mr. Acosta had evaded questions about whether the deal with Epstein had came up when he was a nominee for Trump's administration. How do you think he responded to those questions?
I don't know. I didn't catch that question that they asked. They were batting around so many questions about Trump. When the members were talking over each other, it was all about Trump, Trump, Trump. And I fear that this is going to be their next Russiagate narrative here.
What concerns might you have about whether this came up in vetting? I mean, this deal that happened with Epstein happened well before Acosta was in the administration. I'm curious if you have any questions about whether he was appropriately vetted, given your concern for the victims in this case.
Right, and I'm trying to remember, was the Epstein, was it as prominent in the news during that?
It was prominent in local news, yes, sir.
Okay, in local, yeah. So I don't know. I'm sure the Democrats will ask more about that. Anything about Trump, they're going to try to check every box, I'm sure. We're trying to find out more who dropped the ball. Was it Acosta? Was it the FBI? Was it the local prosecutors? Was it the Department of Justice? Those are the questions I think we need to know, because that was part of what the victims asked us to do, was to hold people accountable in the government that failed to do their job. So that's what we're trying to do. And again, the Democrats focused their whole first hour on Trump, 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 Trump. And I don't think the victims would have been real satisfied with that use of a whole hour of transcribed interview time.
So did you get more names of people you want to talk to, or people you think might be part of this client list?
Well, we're going to try to, obviously, I think we can get names of people that may have been involved in the investigation that may have dropped the ball. We would love to have some names like that. I'm sure those are names that we'll question. But, we're going to need the victims to say some names, too, of some people. And we're going to follow the money. That was one of the things the attorneys asked us to do. And a lot of times if the banks suspect there are people involved in human trafficking, they're going to list that in their suspicious activity report. So if we never get names from the victims, we'll certainly have an opportunity to find some names with the suspicious activity reports. But I think it's going really well, and we'll continue to update you throughout the day, and obviously when it's finished.
Do you expect to hear from the line prosecutor? People keep placing blame on this line prosecutor.
Well, we'll see at the end of this, and this will be public record. We'll see where we need to go from here. But I think one thing that you can see is this is a very serious interview. This is a very serious investigation. We are taking it very seriously. And again, my last words for now is the Trump administration is cooperating. They have turned over tens of thousands of pages of documents. They've allowed us to go in and get the bank violations, which is the one thing the attorneys for the victims asked us to do. They specifically asked us to follow the money like we did in the Biden investigation. I know NBC didn't always cover that very thoroughly, but I think people see that that was a very thorough, substantive investigation. We got a lot of information about shell companies and people involved in sending wires and things like that. If that was happening under Epstein, which is very possible, I would say probable, we should be able to get some names through the bank records. So, thank you.
I'm trying to follow through. Did the former chief of staff tell you that the president was not cognitively up for the job?
Did the president? No. He said he thought the president could perform the duties of the presidency. They've all said that. Every single Biden staffer said that. I'm not.
That matched with the other testimony that he gave you, though?
Well, there were a lot of questions. So the questions are, should the president, where there's inconsistencies with all the people that we've talked to in the Biden administration, is should Biden have had a cognitive test? Some have said no, some have said yes. Some said that was never discussed. Some said, yeah, we discussed it a lot. So the whole issue of a cognitive test, which, again, this is an investigation, was the president cognitively capable of knowing what his staff was doing with the auto pen? Was the staff authorized to sign those documents by the president? If so, was he cognitively able to understand each and every individual pardon, each and every individual executive order?
How do you nail that down? How do you get
Well, it's very difficult. We brought the doctor in, and we asked the doctor the first question, Dr. O'Connor, were you ever told to lie about President Biden's health? And he pled the Fifth Amendment. So, we're doing the best we can. It would have been a lot better and easier if the doctor would have answered questions. The fact that he was trying to avoid self-incrimination, I think, is concerning and should be concerning to everyone. So, thank you all. We'll be back later.